Have you heard of vampires? Are you sure you know their true origin? Not that one. Not that one either, but the one and only true vampire in the world. Our story begins in the 18th century, in a small village in the Habsburg monarchy. A mysterious death sparks fear among the locals, followed by unsettling rumors of a man who refuses to stay in his grave. His name? Petar Blagojević. What happened next would send shockwaves across Europe and fuel the legend of vampires for centuries to come. Petar Blagojević was a Serbian peasant who lived in the village of Kisiljevo, in modern-day Serbia. He was an ordinary villager, and there is no evidence that he held any significant position or was seen as anything other than a regular farmer by his neighbors. Life in Kisiljevo at that time was simple. Most villagers were farmers, living off the land and raising livestock. Petar Blagojević was no exception. He lived a quiet, unremarkable life, tending to his small farm and interacting with his neighbors like any other peasant. The people of Kisiljevo knew each other well, as it was a small and tightly knit community. To the villagers, he was just another man going about his daily routine, working in the fields and taking care of his household. Some villagers would later recall that there was always something unsettling about Petar Blagojević, though they never spoke of it while he was alive. His presence was quiet, almost too quiet, and some claimed that his eyes seemed to watch a little too closely, as if he could see more than others. Children avoided his house, whispering among themselves that the air around it felt colder, even in the peak of summer. Then, one night, without any warning, Petar Blagojević died. There was no sign of illness, no cries for help. He simply passed away in his sleep. The year was 1725. The villagers buried him quickly, as was customary, and life in Kisiljevo seemed to return to normal. But the peace didn't last long. Only a few days after his burial, strange things began to happen. People in the village started falling ill, one by one, seemingly healthy the day before, only to be found pale and lifeless in their beds by morning. Some managed to survive just long enough to whisper chilling last words to their families. They all spoke of the same thing, of waking in the middle of the night and seeing Petar Blagojević standing over them, his cold, dead hands wrapped around their throats. Was Blagojević truly dead? Or had something far more sinister returned in his place? The villagers knew there was only one way to find out. His wife was the first to break the silence. Shaken and pale, she told the villagers that on the night after his burial, she awoke to the feeling of someone watching her. When she turned toward the window, she swore she saw him, standing outside in the moonlight, his eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Others started to report the same thing. A shadowy figure, tall and motionless, lurking near their homes at night. Doors that had been locked were found slightly open by morning, with muddy footprints leading from the gravesite. Something had to be done. If Blagojević had truly risen from his grave, they would have to see it with their own eyes, and put an end to it before it was too late. 9 days had passed since Petar Blagojević was buried. In that short time, terror had consumed Kisiljevo. The deaths continued, and more villagers swore they had seen his shadow moving through the night. Under the flickering light of torches, the villagers gathered at the cemetery. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The priest stood nearby, whispering prayers, while an Austrian official watched, carefully documenting every action. Finally, their shovels struck wood. No one wanted to open the coffin. The wood looked damp and strangely aged, as if untouched by time. One of the bravest men stepped forward, gripping the edge with shaking fingers. With one deep breath, he pried it open. What they saw made their blood run cold. Petar Blagojevic's body was untouched by decay. His skin was smooth, his features relaxed, as if he had merely fallen into a deep sleep. Worst of all, fresh blood stained his lips. The villagers recoiled in horror. There was no more hesitation. The villagers knew what had to be done. With sharpened wooden stakes, they drove one straight through Blagojevic's heart. Blood gushed from the wound, as if his body was still alive. But they didn't stop. The priest led the final step. Blagojevic's corpse was dragged from the coffin and burned to ashes, as the flames consumed him. The village finally fell silent. The strange death ceased. The shadow that had loomed over Kisiljevo was gone. The tale of Petar Blagojević became legend, one of the earliest vampire stories in recorded history. But even as the years passed, whispers remained. Some say his spirit never truly left. That on certain nights, under the pale moonlight, a figure can still be seen standing near the graves, in silent, watching and waiting.